Right, grid lines. I need to win this argument in one direction or another. Am I going to do it? Am I not? So I've given myself a couple of options here. If I was to go the full route that the 6 footer went down, and that's putting grid lines on every deck, that's where they would be roughly. They're a little bit wonky, but I didn't spend too much time trying to get them all refined and everything because I'm not convinced I'm going to do this yet, so I didn't want to lose a lot of hours doing that. And underneath is kind of every other deck, and that actually is what AMT went with. They're not in these positions, but that's what they went with, every other deck. So I might end up doing that because they're bunched up a lot here. And yes, I know I'm going for the 6 footer. I'm trying to recreate that, but it was 6 feet. You know, it was a big piece of kit, and this is a 1400 scale kit. I mean, look, the thing is tiny, so some concessions are going to have to be made, and this might be one of those. So I'm going to faff around with these, and these are just temporary layouts. I'm just going to cut them out, offer them up onto a spare kit part, do some scratching and scribing, and see how they look and get a feel for what I'm going to do with this. I think probably if I was to flip a coin and try and call it ahead of time, I think I might end up just doing this this sort of configuration rather than that one, but just we'll see. I'll be back. Right, decision made. Yeah, we're going to go for these grid lines, but we won't be going every deck. There's too much going on in here, and I think trying to thread the needle of these grid lines through these windows between each deck at this scale is a recipe for disaster. So I'm not going to bother doing that. I'll just kind of go the way that AMT went, and they went every other deck like this, and you can see why they did that. Like totally understand that. So I'm going to go the same route. So these can go in the bin. So I cut a layout, one of the rough ones, and it needs a little bit of tweaking. You see where I've just sort of indicated. So I'll have to scan this and update the CAD for that, but that's fine. Basically all I did was I got the donor part and just sort of held it in place and then ran my finger along it so you can see where the contours actually are in physical sort of 3D terms, and that gives you a good idea of where your horizontal lines need to translate to and stuff like that. So I'll update the CAD for that, and that dotted line is just a visual indication for me in 2 dimensions where that sweep disappears down there. So it's good, all that information is really good to try and get baked into the 2D. The dorsal, I'm still on the fence, but I think actually I'm not going to scribe grid lines into there. You can barely see them on the 6-footer dorsal as it is unless you get right close. And again, same argument, trying to get grid lines etched in between rows of windows there. I don't think it's going to happen, so I'm not going to try. I would rather have good windows and have the decks marked out with paint rather than try and scribe in a deck line that you probably won't even notice if it's there or not in the end. So that's what we're going to do. So I'll scan this and figure out what we're going to use to cut as a scribe guide material. So I'll be back. So that's the grid lines corrected, second pass. Hopefully it won't need any more corrections, but never mind. If it does, it does. You can see the sweep of the grid lines has sort of been corrected to try and get them more horizontal and flat when they're applied to that 3D shape. It looks kind of really weird there, but obviously there's a lot of compound curves going on, so they should translate to a much more straight line. The dotted line there, like I said earlier, was just like a visual cue for me when I'm doing more design work later down the line for the masks, where this transition is, just as a visual kind of cue. It's good to have that information. So the next step is to just sort of roughly fit these again. I'll cut these out and just sort of press them up and see how it all sort of eyeballs into position. If it all looks like it's good, then I'll need to decide what kind of material I'll use to cut these designs into, probably like a heavy duty vinyl or maybe even like a really thin styrene. But basically we need something rigid enough that we can use to run a scribe tool, whatever that may be, sharp point of a knife or a blunt knife even. Yeah, let's see. Moving on. Right, there we are then. I've mangled and mashed this with a bit of double-sided tape just down onto the donor part. Obviously the paper doesn't want to conform to these compound curves, but it's enough to get a good idea. And so that's where you can see those wonky weird lines in 2D where they've translated through the compound curves into flat lines. And that's what we're after. So I'm happy with that. So I think we'll take these layouts and cut them into something that I can use to guide my scribe. I think I'll use something that's at least semi-transparent, if not all the way clear, because I want to be able to keep an eye on where the windows are under all of this, so I don't go misaligning stuff while I'm placing it down and then dragging a sharp blade right through the middle of a window. So let me see what I've got. Maybe even transfer tape might do the job. Might do. Let's have a look. Right, I'm going with Frisket film, which is a really low-tack airbrush masking film. It's transparent enough that I'm going to see the windows underneath it all, so I can keep track of it and don't end up scribing a line all, through the middle of a window, which is obviously not what I want to do. It's pretty thin though, so I'll have to be really careful that I don't push it or dislodge it or just jump over it and start scribing lines all over the place. But just go nice and steady. There's 4 layouts there. You'll be able to see it clearer on screen. So there you see the 4. So the way I'm going to attack this is I'll do the horizontal lines first, and then I'll do the vertical lines. The reason I'm opting to go that route is because I don't want this thing to turn into a massive jigsaw puzzle and having to deal with segment on segment dislodging from each other, and it's going to turn into a nightmare. So I want to do these in long sweeping passes without the interruption of trying to intersect straight lines, and yeah, it would just be a nightmare. So we'll do it this way. Hopefully we'll get what we want. We'll see. Here we go then. I'll use this Tamiya Scriber 2 to be precise. It's just an alpha cutter. You see it says alpha. It uses alpha blades. They're designed for this type of work. They carve a groove out of the material that you're using them on, rather than just cutting and leaving sort of ridges along the cut, which isn't what we want. So enough procrastination. It's time to crap or get off the toilet. So here we go. So I'm not sure what happened there. I think the camera cut out for some reason. I don't know, maybe I had a phone call or something and didn't notice. Anyway, it's cut it out, but so you didn't see any of that. But basically, I put the first segment down, the bottom one, and I've gone lightly along the edge of it there with the alpha cutter. If I turn it over, you might be able to see. Maybe not, but basically the scribe has gone through the paint layer now and we're down into the plastic, so that should be enough. So I'm going to have another crack at this. What I'll do is I'll put the next section down on top of that and do the next scribe line, and hopefully the camera won't cut out again, but well, let's see what happens. Right, so that's the next guide down. Now there's a little bit of tweaking needed to be done there, just to try and split the difference between getting it exactly how the layout sort of dictates where it should be, and then actually where the reality is of where the windows are. Again, we're kind of trying to chase the 6-footer as the goal here, but we're going to have to make some concessions, because this isn't the 6-footer and it's a hell of a lot smaller. So a lot of the clearances that I'm dealing with here are a lot smaller than what they were dealing with. So I'm going to continue like this until we get grid lines on both sides along the horizontal plane, and then move on and do the exact same thing and get all of the vertical lines in using the same technique. So nothing more to be said. Let's get on with it. So the trick is with this, I'm only trying to get through the paint. So I'm kind of fighting two battles here. I don't want to go so deep that we start gouging loads of plastic and lose control of the cutter and start cutting lines all over the place. And also I don't want to dislodge the actual guide, so you've got to go very, very lightly. The first couple of passes are literally just the weight of the blade itself, just starting to remove the very top surface of the paint, and we just go slowly and over and over and over again until you start to get down into the material a little bit more, and then it starts to kind of guide itself. So just patience, light touch. I'm barely touching the paint, but it is doing something. You don't want to allow too much debris to accumulate on the tip there, because it'll get to the point where it creates an obstruction and it will make you jump. Well, it won't make you jump, it will make the blade skip, and you don't want to do that. You want to keep control of the blade as much as possible. And there we go. That's the beginnings, at least, of the grid lines, the horizontal ones. There's a few little areas that are going to need a bit of cleaning up, and you can see, as careful as I've aligned it, there are some areas where the windows are getting very close to those grid lines. That's just the nature of the beast. As I said before, this we have to have some concessions, and a lot of these concessions are going to kind of conspire against us, and sometimes they'll work together and help us, but we'll, we cross those bridges as we come to them and do the best we can. So there we go. So I'm going to continue on this side, and then do the vertical vertical grid lines, and I'll come back later when I've got those finished. So thanks, I'll see you soon. Okay, that covers it for the grid lines on this part. All in all, it's not too bad. There are little bits of touch-up needed here and there, but that's all right. I can deal with that. You can see that the line and the windows are quite close to this edge, so not quite where I wanted them to be, but oh well, I'll have to live with it now because I'm a little bit down the track. I'm not going to be turning back now. Obviously, in hindsight, doing the grid lines first would have been more logical, and then you do the windows to suit the grid lines. But at the time, I obviously hadn't made my mind up and was actually more leaning towards not doing the grid lines. So kind of cart before the horse there, but never mind. It's not too bad. I can live with that. If I was going to do this again, which, I mean, let's face it, it's probably more like when rather than if. But, when I do this again, at least I know that I'll be doing the grid lines first and the windows will be even better placed. But to be honest, they're not bad. They're better than they were. So that's all good. But yeah, so that about covers it. So next up is getting the dorsal fixed into position, dealing with that seam, and maybe start putting some lights into this section. So lots more to come. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Yeah, I said about these windows being a bit too low, but it was all right. I can live with it. Too far down the track, etc., etc. Yeah, that ain't happening. I'm gonna have to do something about them. They're just too close to the bottom of the rim there, and I'm not actually happy with it. So I'm gonna change it. The more I was looking at it, the more it was getting on my nerves. So I'm gonna deal with that. I think it's just as a result of back when I was laying the window layouts. on this part, it's just not quite getting it exactly where it should have been. But you know, like I said at the time, you kind of get what you get, and you take your best shot at it. But didn't pan out this very well this side. But well, I mean, it's all right. But these guys in particular are a bit too low, so I'm going to deal with that. Now, I could go about it pretty fancy like, and you know, sand all this away, put new windows down, spray the primer and build it back up, blah 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 blah. But I think really all I'm going to do is take something sharp and just extend the tops of these windows, this portion, if the camera focuses, you see where I've marked them out. So these windows, what's there, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22 windows that definitely need to be shifted, and maybe a couple either side. I'll see how they look once these have been done. But yeah, basically what I'll do is just make these a bit longer on their length along the top there, and then just smear some filler along the edge, and the filler will fill in the bottoms of the windows and sort of recover their actual proper length rather than them being oversized, and it'll also get rid of the scribe, and then I'll just rescribe the line a little bit further up. So that's what I'm going to do. Bit of a pain, but like I've said several times so far in this project, it's full of concessions, little gives and takes, but you know, nothing that we're not all familiar with doing other projects. So I'm going to get on with this, and then we'll be back to the plan as usual. So I'll see you soon. Right, so the windows have been scraped up, so they're oversized now, slightly too long, but that's cool because now I'm going to close up the bottom with the filler that I mentioned earlier. So but I'm just going to give myself a bit of a sight line because I don't want to go filling loads up in, you know, and making them too short and all weird sizes. So I'm just going to try and give myself a bit of a head start. So really easy way I'm going to do this is I'm going to pick the bottom of the window that I know is thereabouts where I want the rest to kind of follow. So I rest of my finger along the rim, hold the pencil in place, and then the idea is that as the finger follows the contour, it will maintain the distance of the end of the pencil. Real basic stuff here. And there we are. Now we've regained the bottom of those windows. So we started at the top there, and it's gone across the bottom into some of these, and then crept back out to the bottom. So I know that these ones are all right. Maybe these ones are starting to disappear, and somewhere around here are good. So I'm just going to smear a load of filler along there. Alright, so might end up blocking some of this, apologise, but I'm sure you know what's going on here. I'm sure you've all done it before. I'm just sort of shotgunning this in at the minute. Not too worried about being neat with it. My big priority is making sure it's in that grid line and the bottom of the windows, and we'll chase it back out in a sec. Toothpick or something. I want to make sure it's in there. Maybe I should just build this thing 6 feet. It's got to be easier, right? More so the grid line just here, to be honest with you. But make sure there's plenty on that. Alright. Right, so what a mess. But you can still see the light kind of getting through the filler, so it's not too heavy. Right, so I'm going to go and tidy this mess up a little bit, see about opening the windows at their proper length again, and maybe putting in a little spot more primer like there. There's a little bit thin up here, so I'm going to keep chasing this for a little while, and I'll get back to you. Okie dokie. Looks like a train wreck, but it's probably not as bad as it appears. Once some primer's down on there, it will tidy it up a little bit more. And plus, as I keep saying, this isn't the one and done for the windows. This is just the first step, so there'll be more refining happening as the project sort of progresses. But that's all cool. I'm going to carry on now with the rest of the steps, get the dorsal in place, look after seams and stuff like that, get some more primer down, see what the rest of these grid lines are looking like, and then recover the grid line here, like in a slightly different position, hopefully, if there's room to do that. There should be. So yeah, so I'm glad I didn't leave those windows. I don't think there's any real danger of that happening, to be fair. I always seem to talk myself around one way or the other. So anyway, getting back to the program. Right, let's get these two parts together. It's a really load bearing point, so we need to get this joint as strong as we can possibly make it. The usual way I go about it is to epoxy this part as much as possible, just get as much in there as I can get, and even right back up inside there, just fill that space with loads and loads of epoxy. So I'm just going to tack this in place at the front there with a little bit of CA, just so I can handle it a little bit better, and then we're going to attack it from the inside. So here we go. Right, I'm just going to put a drop of this CA in there, just along the tip there. Just want enough just to tack it in place. There's plenty. There we go. Give it a second or two just for it to hold. Right, that's tacked in place, but because it's open backed, there's nothing really dictating the shape and how well this is going to fit. So what we need to do is kind of secure one side first and let it cure, so we get that nice transition. Let me just move my hand there. We get a nice transition here, and you can see how far out it is on the other side. When we hold that side in position, it's miles out. So what we'll do is when this side is cured, we'll spread this side and get it in position and match the shoulder there and get that nice and flush, and then fill the seam as we would normally. So that's what I'm going to do now, and then after all that's done, we'll see about putting the photo etch in place on this torpedo launcher, and then start throwing some more primer around. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll be back when that's sorted, at least the epoxy anyway. So catch you in a sec. That's the first half epoxied and nicely secure. It's gone off enough now that I can deal with the other side. You can just make out how far out these parts are unless you sort of coax them into position. You shouldn't be able to see that lip there. Look, if I pull it out, that's where it should sit. So it's a good way out. You can probably see it there. You see that step? Shouldn't see that step. Should be like that. So I'm going to tack this in place with a bit of CA just at the back here. Just hold it while I mix up some goo and smear it all in, the same as I did that side. And then once that's all cured, I'll probably back it again with some more, and yeah, should be good to go after that. I'm sure you don't need to see anyone mixing epoxy, so I'll skip that and I'll come back to you when that's done. Right, I think that should pretty much wrap it up for this time. The epoxy is nice and cured. Obviously it's going to get a lot harder over the next few days, so that's fine. You can see where it's been applied around the inside there, so it's going to be giving it a lot of strength, which is what you need, because as I said earlier, that's a proper load bearing structure there. There's a lot of forces going on even for a plastic kit. So, and I've had these pop apart right there, along there and along here, and yeah, it's a bit of a nightmare. So that is going to be well and truly avoided for this one. So there we go, starting to look like something now. You can see where the transition is nice and smooth there, not too much of a step. There's a little bit of one, but that'll be taken care of with the filling. You can see where the little knife slipped there, but again, I'm not worried about that. That'll be dealt with in the usual ways. So yeah, pretty good. Let's have a sneak peek anyway, how this dorsal looks. So again, this is one of my replacement parts for this kit. It's a nice, more accurate looking dorsal, like back panel, I guess. So yeah, it's gonna look good. Looks like a face. So yeah, good. So what's next? I think next is going to be taking care of the seams around here. Getting the photo etch in the torpedo bay there. There's a photo etch part that needs to go across along there from the green strawberry set, so that'll get dealt with. And then plenty more primer just to look where the really worst parts are for the filling, and then add these windows into the shoulders, both sides, and start to detail maybe a little bit of this strong back, although that may have to wait until after this guy gets put in place a bit further down the line. So yeah, a little bit more body shopping to happen, I think, and then after that we'll probably start putting some lights in here. So good, moving on at a good pace. So we'll leave it there for part 3. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you in part 4. Take it easy.